listeners and viewers, and welcome to the We Whistle podcast. I'm Denise Williams, and I'm here with my co-host and co-founder, Stacey Luces.
Hey guys.
This episode and episodes like this, what we do is we like to step away from speaking with other Caribbean leaders, Stacey, and just sit and reflect on some of the things that we've learned, and also to share a little bit more with you on what we're doing at Whistle. Now, we want to start up this podcast a little bit by talking about a contradiction that we're seeing emerging. If you're from the Caribbean, or you have roots in the Caribbean, or your heritage is Caribbean, you know that we've actually grown up thinking, doing, acting in the collective. We've been acting with the community in mind. We've been acting where the community comes together to bring together for collective growth. However, we have somehow learned that success is usually meant succeeding alone. And that's the contradiction. We start off in the collective, but we've grown into individualism. So what we want to do is explore a little bit about that tension between our roots and the strengths and the challenges in those spaces, and us sitting in the diaspora and the strengths and the challenges in these spaces, and dare to dream what would happen if we pulled the best of both worlds together. So I grew up in a rural community, a village in central Trinidad called Longdonville. It was a small community where really family were very close. You can actually see families living side by side in the same street along an entire stretch of road. But not only were family close and close in proximity, the community was close. And in those spaces, what you'd find is that people would come together to solve real problems. In those spaces, if you were having a baby, the family showed up for you. I remember my aunts and my grandparents really around the mother, teaching her, showing her how to become a mother. They would take turns. They would give her rest. But I also want to look back on those days with really open eyes, because as much as the community came together, there was Sunday cricket. You would find group events, bazaars, people coming together to raise funds to, fix the streets. Let's not also close our eyes that we also grew up in a Caribbean where violence was predominant and even tolerated, where when we think about mental health, it was hardly ever discussed. Your identity was very defined. You knew your place. You were asked to listen and not contribute. And then as we came into the diaspora, speak when spoken to. And then we came into the diaspora. We came into new countries and we learned different things. We learned about wealth in a different way. We learned about identity. We learned to speak about difficult topics, or at least explore them, that we would not have been able to do back at home. And so success became, accessible. Success from a wealth perspective, from growth perspective. But in that journey, the community was lost, right? And so what we want to do now is think about, okay, well, what does that mean for us as a diaspora group sitting outside of our homes?
Yeah. And one of the things we do with these stories is really try to unearth those lived experiences from the people that own the mic in that 40 minutes to an hour, right? Because we realize that for many of us, we hold kind of the tension of both those worlds. It's almost like living a double life. And I want us to not have judgment on that statement in the sense of, oh, you're being inauthentic or not yourself. it is actually a component of all of us that we have to perform in certain situations to get the result that we need, right? I think where it becomes harder is when Denise talked about that cultural upbringing where we were very collectivist, very warm, very held, very supported. I always joke. I also grew up in so I grew up in Princestown, and yes, that's in South, deep
Deep
South.
South. Mm-hmm.
But what I loved about it is, and I joke about it now, is I had so many cousins, first cousins, that I didn't actually need to learn how to make friends until I was like a grown person in America, right? Because you always had a batch of cousins that you could do something
Yeah,
with.
I remember those days well.
Yeah.
Same for me
Yeah.
too.
And I
Mhm.
think when we have these realities now that maybe do not reflect our full identity, our full selves, that's probably why we don't fully see Caribbean or global Caribbean excellence fully um, in its glory. And that's what we try to do here, right? Because when we come from communities that understand how to share resources, how to build ecosystems, how to support mothers, how to support children. And yes, there's the dark side of that. And I think we can learn lessons from that. We can talk about mental wellness. We can talk about planning for our aging and ailing parents. We can bother them to go to the gym and eat better, right? Don't eat
Mhm.
roti, maybe eat
Mhm.
whole wheat roti. So here are the systems that we want to talk about in these episodes, right? How do we take some of those informal communities, those informal ecosystems, and create systems or blueprints by which we can learn from? How do we take the community standard of healthcare that we grew up with, where my aunts, yeah, I remember my mom had my sister, I was about 10, and everybody came to the house. Like they bought food, somebody was cleaning, like everybody was sort of showing up for the mom. And when I had my kids here in America, it was just me and like my husband. My sister came every now and then when she could, but really it didn't dawn on me how different those realities were in terms of what I experienced, in terms of what I saw growing up and then what I experienced as an adult. So how do we take this version of community healthcare? And we'll talk about some of the episodes where people share instances where Michelle Otti shared about being a cancer survivor, being diagnosed with cancer and thinking, it's so inconvenient because I have a full schedule. You would hear from Khalid talking about how she took a friend to have major surgery, and the friend was up until the minute of registration on her phone, typing out emails. And so we want to talk about what are some models that Denise and I will try to extrapolate from all of these episodes to share with you so that if this is your first episode or your 10th with us, that would
10th
have been our 10th.
episode. Yeah. Woo.
You can learn something, right? Dens?
Yes, but I think, as we listen to the stories that we're hearing from the people that we're interviewing, and as Stacey and I learn from each other every day, when we think about Caribbean excellence, there are things from our past that we don't draw upon, right? And so we want to reposition success. We want to reposition excellence in a way that is grounded in our reality. And what we want to also say is like we've come into these new spaces, whether you're in the US, whether you're in London, whether you're in Canada, and we're creating new forms of success and new forms of excellence. But somewhere along the way, we're letting go of that community-ness, that supportedness, and the spirit of what we heard earlier on resiliency and that thing inside of us that makes us want to grow and become better. Um, what happens when we take the best of both worlds, right? And so today we want to ask a really, really cheeky question, right? Stacey and I, we started Whistle because we recognized that there was Caribbean excellence all around us. The issue was it was not connected. The tissue was not connected. And so we found our community, we found our stories, we found our support in systems that were not systems that we came from. And we said, and what happens in situations like that is that you're building on your own. We acknowledge that there are things in the Caribbean that, have led to trauma. And we want to let go of those things, and we want to focus on the best of both worlds. And we chuckle and we laugh and we say, okay, not everybody could whistle, right?
Right.
So not
I
everyone.
literally, full confession, cannot physically whistle. I claim it.
But what do we mean when we say not everybody could whistle, right?
Yeah.
And it's a mindset. It is, can you grow? Can you define success beyond yourself, beyond your individual ambition? Can you look at the world and know innately that we go further when the collective goes further? And that it's a global truth, but for our community in the Caribbean diaspora, we haven't found a way to compound our successes, our efforts. And so today we want to ask you very cheekily, can you whistle? And
Yeah.
will you whistle, right?
Yeah.
And so let's explore a little bit about what is a whistler and what was Whistle created to do. So we created Whistle to bring together global Caribbean leaders and strategic partners to do extraordinary things, to really focus on wealth, community, and legacy with an understanding that as a collective, we go further, faster. So a whistler is someone who actually joins us on that journey. It's someone who has already achieved a level of success in many different versions of how you define success, but is at the point now where they know, okay, you know what? I have something to give that is beyond me to help the generation that's coming and also to those vulnerable in our society. And we've been meeting a lot of them, right, Stacey?
Yeah. I think one of the so I will say this story clumsily, and I don't know how to say it elegantly, so I will just say it in my own way. So, I think I've mentioned I'm one of 5 kids, the eldest. And so my brother, who's right in the middle, he has Down syndrome. And growing up in the Caribbean, so Junior is about 41. So, 4 decades ago, there was not much in terms of resources for him. And I was telling Denise as we were planning for this episode, talking about who can whistle and who cannot whistle, is there's a certain thing, intangibility about a whistler or a Caribbean diaspora person that has reached a level of emotional intelligence and just acute awareness in the world, and they operate differently. And like I said, I'm going to do this clumsily. So when I first went back in the day, the Ministry of Education, when I was a child and Junior was born, Sir Humphrey had a granddaughter that had Down syndrome. And back then, Trinidad didn't really have resources for what to do with these children or adults, really. He had the resources to go to England, find resources, find the right experts, and bring them back to the island. And that is how, as an island, we became educated on who these children were, what their capacity was, what their degree of intelligence was, what they could be capable of. Without that innate level of understanding, we were ignorant of it, and we were doing we didn't know what to do, right, as a country. All that to say, the juniors of the world have one different chromosome from the rest of the population. It's what sets them apart. It's what gives them their special space in the neurodivergent curve. It is how they are identified physically. They all look alike, no matter what race, creed, color, religion they are. And it's a source of constant fascination for a lot of us that recognize them anywhere we go, right? For the family members. I'm not saying Caribbean people have, I told you it's a clumsy way to do it, but we have a gene.
They do.
We have a gene.
We have
some chromosome. We have something built into our DNA and because we are operating in a space of whistlers, of this indefinable yet undeniable thing that we can identify a whistler just by looking at them. And so I want to say that it's a look and a feel and a vibe about how you operate in the world. It's an ability to build collectively. It's an ability to operate at scale. It's an ability where I've made it to a certain level of success, and now I want to give back because legacy, collaboration, community, laughing with my whole face matters, right?
And it's not just we want to give back; we want to build differently,
Yes.
right?
Global thinkers,
Yes,
right?
you recognize that, in a collective approach to growth, to wealth, to success, to community, that there is so much more that you derive as an individual and the community derives. We're about to get into our first Whistle Capital Circle. And what we're doing in that space is that we have all these really successful individuals in a room. But as successful as we are, we have issues, right? We have issues, there are problems we don't know how to solve. So our first task is to tap into the excellence in the room. So Stacey and I are presenting a case for some issues that we're working on. We have other people coming with everything from marketing to breaking through globally,
raising funds for nonprofits,
to raising funds for nonprofits, and really tapping into the room. But getting back to what Stacey says, right? It's this mindset of success can be defined differently. And we had a recent episode where Khalid Thompson was speaking about success from cultural assets, success from how many people are there with you in your journey. And she gave a very emotional account of watching a friend walk into a hospital alone and knowing that as a Caribbean person, that's not the way we do things. And so she gave up her morning and walked into that room with the person. But for us, when we look on at the end of the day, and they've done these studies, right? At the end of a life, when people reflect on what really matters is not the job titles that you've had.
We didn't list we're not going to list our degrees.
We're not going to list, I did 2 degrees in this and 1 degree in that. We're not going to go, I was the CEO of this or the CFO.
My investment portfolio is currently.
My investment portfolio is
Some
with
people may actually care about that, but none of them on the depth.
No, on that study that looked at what mattered to people at the end of their lives, it was about the relationships, the impact that they had on people, the impact that people had on them, how their children view them. And there was a loneliness.
Yes.
And a desolateness about people who focused on what we have been told for decades what is success, which is climb the ladder, get as high as you can. And all of that is important because we do want ambition and we do want to succeed. But then ultimately, what's the next level and how can we go further, faster together? And so when we look at some of our whistlers and what they're able to do, Stacey earlier talked about Michelle Otti, and big up Michelle Otti. Michelle Otti is a principal consultant with the World Bank, the private sector side of the World Bank, where they look at PPPs, public-private sector partnerships, and look at infrastructure, especially across developing regions. And one of the infrastructure that is really important to her is health. First, because of her own personal journey, but also too, when she looks at infrastructure, she talks about, everything from your roads to your hospitals to your school. Those things enable development. But for her, since being in Whistle and with a collective mindset to give back and grow, we've been able to pull together Michelle, Raymond Levy, who's also in the healthcare sector, and Joseph Davis, who is also in the healthcare sector. And now, with a collective mindset, they're looking at how can they build an infrastructure for healthcare that's different, that's more impactful, that they can pull together resources differently, and the network of the collective in the diaspora and back home is coming together around this entire
Yeah.
sector, right?
Yeah. And we have, whistlers that are working on portfolios of multiple companies that they own or they are partnering with and really grappling with challenges based on the economy, on immigration, on inflation, like cross border, whatever, right? And so having a group like this that understands not only the institutional challenges, right, that we talk about on NBC News or whatever, but the inherent cultural nuances when you are of a Caribbean diaspora background, but also working with others in the region and sort of cross pollinating that. There's something to be said for being sharper because you've had the safe space to talk about what you want to talk about and you get advice that you couldn't necessarily source anywhere else. ChatGPT is not going to give us this sort of advice. And so even being in that room, being in that space, hearing from others that are maybe not navigating an identical journey to you, but something similar that you can build off of is really invaluable, I think, now as we're trying to scale, but quite honestly, scratching our head wondering, what am I scaling to, right?
Right.
They're helping you figure that reinvention pod out too. When we heard from Rochelle Gapere,
Yes, Gapere, yeah.
she's a happiness performance coach. And she talked about the fact that large organizations are integrating this into how they operate because they have built a direct correlation between happier, more balanced employees and their return on investment and the things that they do in the world, right? We heard from Naresh's episode where he demonstrates what happens when you step away from whatever the expected path is. And he helped us shift how we think about risk and challenges. I got feedback on his episode where somebody said, hey, he was able to take a big complex thing and break it down into a very simple way. And I reached out to him to sort of get more information. So we really love that.
And the thing about Rochelle and Naresh is that what they're teaching us is that sometimes you have to go against the grain.
Yeah.
You have to go against what's accepted. You have to be brave and bold, because Rochelle talked about being very secure in her identity of being both African and Caribbean and knowing that she was different and special. And Naresh, who had this whole expectation of, having to go to university and being pushed in a certain strategic direction and go, no, wait, hold on, I want to do it differently, and having the courage. And that's what we mean when we talk about the strength of where we come from, because in this room, we're sitting with people who are accomplished leaders in their own right, and then coming into a space that allows you to question things and push borders and develop new ways of successes. And that's what these two leaders in their own right shared their stories with us. And I think it was profoundly profoundly impactful. We have Stacey introduced me to Colin Yearwood, and Colin Yearwood is a master salesperson, right? Like he's of Guyanese descent. Big up to
Guys, sometimes
Guyana.
Colin makes me so uncomfortable because he pulls out such truths out of quite honestly, some of the falsehoods we tell ourselves around sales, around conflict management, around hard things in our businesses that manifested because of unseen things in our lives that we're not dealing with.
Yeah. And the truth is, as accomplished as Stacey and I are in our own individual parts, Colin was able to come in and really coach us. You're a coach. You still coach big CEOs, women, men.
We all need a coach.
Yes,
we all
please.
need you.
I say, go get a coach. But he was able to sit with us and really give us some practical advice. And this is what we talk about when you bring excellent people together, what happens. And I think it was in the last episode that we had, Stacey spoke about you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the majority of
Yeah,
your
man.
time with. And also challenge us to see, you know, now with today's technology, those 5 people don't have to be in close proximity to you. But what it is that you want to bring people who will challenge you, who will stretch you, who will enable you to think differently. And if you are humble enough to recognize, I don't know it all,
Mm.
you know, then you benefit so much from people like Colin Yearwood. So we want to really big up Colin, for, you know, he he leads masterminds on sales coaching across the globe, is
Yes.
very successful in his own right.
As a matter of fact, he stood us up because he had to jet set off.
Jet set off.
Jet set off too. I'm sorry, Colin. Yes.
But it is this Caribbean excellence to excel, and why we're singling out Colin is because he also understands that mindset of, if I were to support Stacey and Denise in their endeavor, then we can build a stronger community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I would like to do too. So the first episode that we did together, just Denz and I, really focused on the macro, right? The global. We mentioned Shaggy and his share shirt and all of that stuff. So if you didn't catch that episode, go back and catch that episode. But we focused on the macro Caribbean diaspora vibe, right? Like we talked about the 10 million global diaspora. We talked about the potential for 184 billion in global economic spend, and how if we as a collective diaspora came together under the Whistle platform and directed even 10% of that spend by virtue of what we're doing, which is our council sessions, who meet monthly in these mastermind sessions, the quarterly capital circle that Denise just mentioned, where we bring sharp people together to help accelerate each other in terms of wealth, community, and legacy. And we will also be launching our We Whistle with Love Foundation in the next couple of weeks. So we'll talk and share more about that with you. But the thing we wanted to do with this episode, and you heard us drop in names, we don't typically do that. We wanted to, one, humanize some of the guests that you've heard on the podcast. But also, again, if this is the first episode that you're catching, whet your appetite to go back and listen. But the most important part of this was bringing some of these big topics and these macro thinking, right? Like when we talk about collective diaspora power and we talk about impact, some people zone out because it's like, what does that have to do with me?
Yes.
And so on an individual level, I want to talk about just as founders, what this has meant to us, because, we, in doing this, it's not been easy.
No,
it's
absolutely
been
not.
the challenge of our life. And I would say that every day I learn something from Denise.
And I learned something from Stacey.
And they're not always the greatest tasting medicine.
Nope. No, it's very humbling.
It's very humbling, but stepping into even a space where she has the lived experience and the clarity around challenges that me as a Caribbean diaspora woman, mother, friend, wife, all of those things are going through that make me better. And I think that we cannot underestimate, even both of us individually and together going through this journey and changing so much to serve our community in this bigger mission. We can't underplay or underscore what Denise and I bringing together 60 people last December in our preview event, who are now bringing to us their cherished 3 or 4 people.
Yes.
And so now we're feeling that build and that momentum. And, I'm saying it, I'm getting like chills, not because like, oh my God, we're going to be famous and rich, but it's because, no, that's how it starts. It starts with me saying, I want something different, and her saying, I want something different. And then my cousin and her friend saying, who's the one that connected us? Oh, both of you want the same thing. Go talk to each other. And then us
Big up
reaching,
Nazma.
right?
Mhm.
Us reaching into our little pocketbook and our little LinkedIn and being like, oh, after thousands of people I know, let's start with this 5.
Yeah.
And that really was the point of this episode is we wanted to not only humanize and be vulnerable in how hard this work is, but also challenge you to dig into your pocketbook. And even if you don't join the Whistle community, which why would you not? Find the 2 or 3 people
Yes.
that sharpen you and make you think differently and keep you curious and teach you about happiness as a business strategy or tell you, hey, you know why you didn't close that high ticket in coaching contingency thing? Because you were scared of hearing no.
Yep.
You danced around it.
Yeah, there's a old adage that says, and I live this deeply. So I've been buried in corporate all of my life. Stacey has dropped into entrepreneurship for the last, I would say, 4 to 5 years. My journey has been really sitting in corporate, and they tell you that when you build something, when you are a founder,
Yes.
you're really building yourself.
Mhm.
You learn more about yourself than you learn about a business, and it's very humbling.
And it's so messy.
It's messy,
So messy.
and all
And
of the
beautiful and
it's
chaotic.
all of the things that we have learned to say were important suddenly doesn't become as
Mm.
important. And the beauty of what we are doing at Whistle is that of all of the leaders that we are speaking to and the ones who are brave enough to be vulnerable and in their accomplishments, in the things that they have done and continue to do, they also talk about loneliness. They talk about
Fear.
the fear. They talk about the fragility of
They
success.
talk about being abandoned at birth. They talk about being adopted. They talked about having a child who is going through mental, health challenges.
Yes.
You know,
And behind every leader is a powerful story that you, listener, you viewer, can relate to. And when we share these stories with you, it's because we want you to learn from the leaders that we are uncovering and also be inspired by the story of excellence that's coming out of the Caribbean. And when we talk about excellence, what we're finding is that we're learning to define excellence in new ways, in different ways. So, in one of our episodes, we were talking to Dr. Dominic Lewis, and Dr. Dominic Lewis is a very established orthopedic surgeon who, again, came through the corporate ladder, was at Howard. He grew up in when he said he became a man in that space of Black excellence, and of course came into Florida, started with this huge corporation, was doing extremely well, and looked around and realized that he was building this successful career, but he wasn't building anything for himself or for his children, and so all of us pause at some point in our lives to look at ourselves and go, am I at the right space? Am I at the right time? Even our most recent of the episode that you're going to hear from Khalib Thompson, she's sitting on the verge of turning 50, going, do I have to do it over? What is success?
But also, she shared that when her mom was passing, she was in Jamaica and Khalib and her sister were with her mom. And even in their intimate isolation of ushering her through onto that next stage of her journey, her mom's journey, the community was showing up for them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what was really poignant for me is she stressed that her mom was not loud and like in charge and like the bright shining look at me in the room. It was this quiet, powerful matriarch
Yes.
that did all the planning and did all the like
And the supporting
yes
and the
man,
community
but also
building.
it's grunt work to be the glue.
Yes. It is.
It is grunt work to be the
Yes.
glue. And I think, oh shit, I just had an epiphany. I think
it is
you and
grunt work.
I think you and I
doing the grunt work.
we're doing the glue work.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Yeah. Come on. Yes.
So
if you're a glue, big up to you. If you're the glue in your community, in your
man.
family, the work that goes on behind the scenes, it's tough. It's
Yeah.
hard. It requires everything those days when you're down.
So
you
who
know?
is a whistler? We would like to think we embody, being a whistler because we founded the thing. But really it's someone that can hold their identity, that can engage with others, that can operate at scale, that can still be curious and courageous and brave enough to talk about sharing a 1-bedroom mattress with 11 people, that can share about their most humbling health journey in terms of surviving cancer and recognizing that I may not make it and I need to do things differently, right? And so, a whistler, the people that we bring on this podcast for you, I mean, for us too, but mostly for you, brings that Caribbean instinct to build
Together.
alongside others in the diaspora so that we can navigate systems that still aren't built for us, so that we can merge wealth, community, and legacy in a way that capitalizes on the potential of the economies of scale that we can have, and we're seeing other diasporas do. And but we want to do it with heart and warmth. And we don't want to sit here in cute suits and like earrings and lipstick and like,
oh, we want that too, those
we
days.
want that too, but that's not all there is. There's a gritty part to this that cannot be stressed. And for those of you walking in that pocket, we really see you and acknowledge that work. And, you know, when you guys hear Khalib's episode with Island Space Museum, Caribbean Museum, like you'll hear the raw passion in her voice and also the tears,
the heartache of building,
because she is building. And you know, we honor that. We honor all of you doing things out there that we have no idea in the background what you're dealing with, but we aim here to bring people that can make the journey maybe less.
Yeah, we also want you to know that you're not alone, right?
Yeah.
So in all of the leaders that we have heard their stories from, each one of them has said, gosh, if only I had a community like Whistle. And I'm not saying this to blow our own horn, but it's if you really had a community.
No, man, we need to blow up.
Yes, because if you had a community that understood where you came from, really, and you can talk openly about it. Because when we heard Naresh talk about, you know, sharing a mattress with, sharing a room, a group with 11 people, he didn't come from it from a point of negativity. There was joy there. There was like, you know, it was an adventure.
But he also had never shared that story.
Yes, but he'd never shared that story because that's not a story that we usually tell about. But I can assure you that even when I think of my own family migrating to Canada, that it was an aunt who reached out to help, who reached out, and in their growth, you know, you grow away from that community to look at success from a completely different space. But all of our stories, there's a thread, whether you came here as a student, whether you came here as an expat, whether you came here as a migrant, however you arrived here, what happened is, yes, we're succeeding. And yes, we're rising, but we're also losing parts of us. And we're saying that this does not necessarily have to go. You can reclaim that part of you. So it's so funny. We say to people, we are a private leadership organization at We Whistle Global. And leadership is many things. And you can go to any organization. So, for example, I'm not going to call the organizations, but if you go into the top CEO organization, if you have a certain revenue,
if it looks and smells like what you think it is.
Yes. If you have a certain revenue in your bank account or your title, then you can be part of that organization. If you look at some of the women's organization as well, it's very similar. If you sit within the C-suite, you can be part of that organization. What we're saying at Whistle is if you are a true leader and you believe in pushing yourself to succeed in whatever space, sports, culture, science, technology, coaching, whatever the space is, and your goal is to ensure the collective, the people around you, the ladders and bridges for the next generation is part of your DNA, then this is the space for you.
Yeah. And, if you had talked to both of us 2-3 years ago, we probably would not have been whistlers.
No, absolutely not.
And
Too
so,
busy succeeding.
yeah. And through all of the medicine life delivers you, right? This is how we begin creating a platform where we get to sort of empower who gets access, where capital goes, what conversations we have, how we direct certain economic agendas in a way that reaches not only our generation where we are right now. In a lot of cases, it's a time of reinvention and recalibration. But also, a lot of us are thinking about, well, in the next season, what happens? And I will give Joe Davis, one of our whistlers, full credit for this. He said, everybody have a plan A and a plan B. Everybody probably need a plan C, which is the Caribbean plan,
Caribbean,
right?
yes.
And so when Whistle works, capital is not going to just move for the individuals, for all of us individually, like it has been. Every version of that podcast you would have listened to shares the individual trajectory to the height. And then you get up there and you look around, and not only do you not see anyone like you, but you're like, where are my people? And so how do we build somewhere where it's not a landing pad, but it really is, shout out to Carla Gammon. She used to be a mentor of mine many years ago. She worked, she was in the military, in the Air Force. One day I was having a challenge with a position I had, and then there was a position I wanted. And she said, Stacey, you have to think of a slingshot. And a slingshot, you have to pull back to move forward, to gain that momentum and that velocity. And man, she told me that story at least 15, maybe even 18 years ago. And I always think, is this my slingshot moment? And for a lot of the Caribbean diaspora right now, considering all of the things we talked about in the last couple of episodes, but some of the things we started with, many of us are feeling that, not burden, but a sense of responsibility and a sense of, oh my God, I've made it. What's my legacy? What am I going to do next? And I will say to you that in that breath between where you want to go and the pullback, it's an honorable space to be.
Yes.
And when you pull back and you take that breath, and hopefully you take that breath with us or with each other, find your vision of a whistler. Once you hit that velocity and you pull forward, man, we don't know how far we're going to go.
And I want to talk a little bit about something that Stacey just said, right? She talked about the legacy that we want to build. I want to actually talk specifically to the parents of all of us raising children here in the diaspora, wherever you sit, US, Canada, Europe, Africa, wherever it is you sit. And let's talk specifically about here in the US. We are raising children largely in Caribbean value-led homes, right? And the food that we eat, how we raise them, how we treat them. We teach them to be respectful, ambitious, push the boundaries. There are no ceilings. But when they go out there, these kids are still other. Even though they're Americans, they were born here, first generation, second generation. And it's that otherness that we need support for. When we grew up in the Caribbean, we had a village around us, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, sports groups, church groups that helped us.
We had Indian matinees on Sunday. Shout out to anybody growing up in the 80s and 90s. I don't know if you guys still do it.
Oh my god!
Remember the 3-hour Indian movies with the singing and the rain?
I don't know what road she's going down in, but her point is true because there was community around that. The group sat around the television and watched these movies, or in the cinemas and watched these movies. There was that. Our children here are growing up with that tension that they need a support system as well. And as we talked about building We Whistle with Love, which is our foundation arm, which is the arm that also supports our next gen. Think about how can we help our children grow more comfortably with a confidence of who they are, a confidence of their roots, a confidence that they can be themselves in new spaces, learning new things, and how we can support them.
And I wanna really shine a light on many of us have made it, right? Like we have the career, we have the house, we have the car, we have the Amex card, whatever your version of success is. And we think that when we give our children these things, that they, by virtue of the fact that we made it, they will also make it. And I want to stress that that's not always the case. It may be the case some of the time, but not all of the time. And with our the next generation, and I work with, hundreds of people, right? Like who've all made it and are still struggling and grappling with parenthood. And the thing about this generation is that when they can't see themselves in the spaces that they're in a way that supports their whole self, it detracts from their
Mm-hmm.
success. It
Mm-hmm.
detracts from their um, spirituality. It detracts from their joy. It detracts, honestly, from their potential. And in any human in the world, our desire is to be the highest version of ourselves that we can be. I don't care who you are, even the bad guys. They want to be the best bad guy, right?
The
Like that,
best version of
unfortunately.
yourself. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so when we create these areas and these opportunities for the next generation to see not only Caribbean diaspora excellence, but to talk about the hard things, it creates a space to break through that block that sometimes even in our 60s, 70s, heck, even our
Yep.
80s,
Yep.
they're struggling with, right? So this is the responsibility that comes with being a whistler. This is what we're building at Whistle. Not everyone will choose this, and
And that's
and
okay.
that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But if you recognize yourself in a lot of the conversations that we're having, then you already understand what this is. You already know that this is something that you are looking for, which isn't another network. You're looking for a way or a path that begins to reflect who you truly are. And I want to challenge you until I stepped into the arena of who I fully am, a year and a half ago, probably. But the journey to there took a long time, a whole decade and more. But until I entered this arena and I'm fully aware of what I want to do and how I want to live and what my next, honestly, 15, 20 years look like and who I want to do it with, that created a whole version of me, a whole potential for me that would not have come to fruition had I stayed where it was comfortable.
Right. And where you were excelling, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yes, I think for those of you listening, those of you viewing Stace and I on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcast, and there's something in you that is really connecting to what we're saying, reach out to us. It's very easy for you to find us. We Were So Global on Instagram, on YouTube, on our website.
Mm-hmm.
But what we want you to take away from this conversation is that your success, you don't have to do it alone. And that if your story feels very messy and very painful and
You're
very
in good
hard,
company.
you're in good company because the most successful people that we know, they're still messy
Messy.
and it's still hard
And it's still gorgeous.
and it's still beautiful
Yeah.
and wonderful. And the thing that makes it worthwhile is the people that you have around you. And when you have people around you who genuinely believe in your path and where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why when we acknowledge the hard things about us, the places of trauma in us, the places where, it's that crab in a barrel where it's a point you're coming from to the world from a point of scarcity instead of a place of abundance, then you limit yourself. And when you think, oh, that person is going to I don't know, Stacey, steal my idea, prevent me from growing. Those people do not belong in this space or in your space. This is a space where we truly believe that if you are working on something, come and hear from other people who have built other things and benefit
I
from
have a
that.
quote for you guys that I want to give, and I want to shout out Marshall Montano for this quote.
Marshall Montano.
But even if he didn't write this, it says, so I mean, the song is cool anyway, right? So it says Showtime in 5, so Louis starts it.
That would be encore.
Right?
Mhm.
Front page, this is it. Front page is where legends belong, but backstage is where legends are born.
Yes. Yes.
Think about that, right?
So you have to be, you can't get in front of the stage if you haven't done the work behind the stage. And what Marshall does, and he acknowledges it very well in the various interviews, podcasts, is that there are times when he's alone, but there are times when he has had a community of support around him. And you do not see him building a road
You see him
march,
on
that
stage.
record road
Exactly.
march by himself. It is deep collaboration, and sometimes with competitors, and sometimes with people you don't
I
think.
feel like these episodes are a backstage pass.
This is absolutely your backstage pass. This is not a networking group. This is not where you come to exchange business cards. This is where you come to tell real stories, share real moments, and build from the struggles, but also from the wins. And we have a good time.
And Hannah, don't be stingy. Like, share, subscribe.
Yes.
Up to the podcast. Visit us at We Whistle Global on all handles, whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever your fancy is. And we will catch up with you next time.
Thank you.